Hi everyone, my name is Junon. I have a health science background and I'm the author of the book Truth and Empathy, How to Find Your Soulmate. And I'll put a link to my book below. This video is about, based on the 16 MBTI personality types, how to confirm that you are indeed an intuitive. I see a lot of people online and even in real life discuss and argue whether someone is an intuitive or a sensor. So what I've done is that I've created a long list of characteristics of an intuitive so that based on that you can determine if you are part of that group. So if you resonate with pretty much all of these characteristics, it means that you are an intuitive. If not, you are a sensor. And also I have that list on screen so that I don't miss anything. So let's start. So first, I want to define intuition based on my experience. So intuition is a form of muscle testing, kinesiology, to determine absolute truth, and it can be applied to past, present, and future objects, facts, people, or events. It can take various forms. For example, change in subtle energy, emotions, gut feelings, dreams, psychosomatic symptoms, and so forth. And it basically taps into our Creator's or the Lord's mind. So basically you want to know what is God's will. So now we're going to start with the list. I'm going to just scroll down here. So intuitives have an alpha to theta brainwave dominance, and that starts from birth. So according to my favorite spiritual teacher, David R. Hawkins, is that intuitive feelers make up about 4% of the world population and intuitive thinkers about 8%. So it's only about 12% of people who actually fall into that group. And these personality types or brain types are not inherited from their biological parents, or biological siblings are not more likely to be intuitives if, let's say, you have a sister or brother that is part of that group. And they're more likely to be nose breathers because of the fact that they have slower brainwaves, and your brainwave dominance will determine your resting breathing at a 1-to-1 ratio. So they have a greater chance of having their tongue resting on the roof of their mouth automatically, and the tongue shapes the upper jaw, so they have a well-developed jaw and 32 straight teeth. So in other words, there's an increased likelihood that they have a normal jaw. And also they're less likely to suffer from mental illnesses because hyperventilation means that your brain is not getting proper oxygenation, and that often leads to mental illness, and it's less the case for people who are intuitives. So if they do develop a mental illness, it is less severe and it's easier to heal. Their core energy is positive, and especially it's after an aura cleansing, because what people don't understand is that there are two levels. You have the core energy of the person, and a lot of people have impurities in their fields. If, let's say, you clear that up and a person is healthy or most likely an intuitive, their core energy is also positive. But with many sensors, it's not the case. You remove the impurities and the core energy is still emitting a negative frequency. And when it comes to the intuitives, there is one that is an exception. In other words, people who have a theta brain dominance will remain mentally healthy even if they're exposed long-term to an unhealthy environment. And intuitives can easily meditate because their brain dominance is, again, alpha to theta, so it means that they're already in a meditation, eyes open, so it's easier for them to meditate on a regular basis. Another interesting point is that intuitives don't experience time the same way because their brainwaves are slower, so it's almost like they're in a light sleep sort of state. So if, let's say, someone sleeps for 8 hours, they don't feel often that they've been in bed for 8 hours. It may feel like 4 or 2. Well, that is the experience of intuitives compared to sensors who actually feel every minute. And intuitives also have a long attention span and are not easily bored compared to, let's say, sensor perceivers. Actually, sensor perceivers, if they do have a mental illness, actually most of them do, is that they will suffer from ADHD or ADD. So in other words, they have a hard time focusing, they're easily bored, which is not the case for intuitives. And since intuitives are in a meditative state, eyes open, they tend to have a vivid imagination towards people when it comes to intuitive feelers, and it's geared towards objects when it comes to intuitive thinkers. So they often daydream. They are uninterested in repetitive or detail-oriented work, for example, accounting or logistics. Even if they are talented, they are not professional athletes, entertainers, artists, or businessmen. So one exception is probably Michael Jackson, but again, if the exception confirms the rule. So in other words, you won't see Mother Teresa wanting to be like an actress or a singer like Celine Dion. So it's not gonna happen. Is that they dress conservatively. So you won't see an intuitive with a nose ring, blue hair, or tattoos. So you'll see sensor perceivers having this type of way of dressing because they are the creatives and they like to stand out, and they are the type of people who like to take risks, even in terms of how they dress. The intuitives emit more coherent and positive energy than sensors, and they have a healing effect on them. So if a person actually is near an intuitive feeler because they are universal healers, they can get a healer just being close to that person. So again, this is something that you won't see with sensors in general, but more specifically sensor judges. Actually, sensor judges have the lowest energy, and people often feel drained spending a lot of time with them. The other aspect also is that since they have slow brainwaves, it's easy for them to fall asleep and have better sleep, and they actually have better quality of sleep if they sleep alone than if they sleep in the same bed as someone who's a sensor, because of physiological synchronization. So an intuitive who spends a lot of time with a sensor, especially a sensor maybe who has a lot of like emotional issues and things, and they have like really fast brain waves, they will see a difference in terms of the quality of their sleep, and it's better for them to sleep alone. And also they have a lower tolerance for environmental toxins. If a person breathes through the nose, it means that their diaphragm actually works properly, and the diaphragm is a pump for the lymph nodes. So you'll see that intuitives have cleaner bodies and they're more sensitive to, let's say, archery colors, flavors, even in terms of, let's say, if a person is a smoker, all of this, they have a lower tolerance than sensors. The other aspect also is that they often have paranormal abilities, for example, clairvoyance, telepathy, clairaudience, precognition, especially when it comes to the intuitive feelers. And also you'll see that although officially there are intuitives who are extroverts and some are introverts, but really introversion or extroversion has to do with if a person's energy is lower or higher than people around them. So in other words, since intuitives have better energy than sensors, they will act like introverts, even though they will be, let's say, an ENFJ, so, or even like an ENFP, because of the fact that to recharge, to sort of like increase their energy, they have to isolate themselves. If we were in a world in which there was a large population of intuitives, these intuitives would actually start behaving like extroverts, so they would want to spend time with other people, but it's not the case, obviously. And also, the other aspect is that since they need to recharge alone, they actually thrive in solitary confinement. Actually, it's a punishment for most sensors to, let's say, if you're in a jail, they actually will lock you up and there's no sound, and basically most sensors cannot tolerate total silence and being alone for long periods of time, which is the opposite for intuitives. Also, intuitives can remember their dreams because they are naturally, again, in a meditative state, so it's not difficult to get into, let's say, the theta brainwave, which that's where most dreams are being, created. Whereas if a person is a sensor, they have to go all the way from high beta to all the way down to theta. Most of the time, they don't remember their dreams. Their dreams are complex and numerous. So in other words, they don't dream like once a month. They might be dreaming like every other day, and they remember these dreams. That these dreams are complex, and they actually often use these dreams to make decisions about important aspects of their lives. So for example, an intuitive may wait to get a vision or a dream before making an important decision in their life. For example, should I take this job or marry this person? They need that to actually confirm that yes, this is the right decision. Intuitives know that they need to be impartial to have access to that truth. So you'll see that over time they develop like an understanding of like what type of like environment that is conducive to have these dreams that tell them the absolute truth. And the majority of intuitives are believers in a higher power, except maybe the INTPs or ENTPs, but these are actually the least intuitive of the that group. In other words, they have an alpha brain dominance and also their left brain dominance. So you'll see actually people who are left brain dominant are less likely to believe in let's say God or a high power, because the way, let's say, you really want to access spirituality is through being a right brain dominant. So also they tend to bow to again that higher power because they acknowledge their limitations as a human. Because the contrast is that they will dream something that makes no sense and then see it happening in real life. So they realize, wait a minute, the five senses are not a reliable way to know what is the truth. So it has sort of a humbling effect on the intuitive, knowing that to get guidance they need to bow to a higher power. So that's something that I've noticed with intuitives. And also they realize that when you talk about thy will be done, they really are talking about the truth that is beyond the five senses. So these intuitives tend to want the truth, and they know that that particular message that they're getting is the best option long term for everyone. Because most people, especially sensors, is that they're only looking at short term. Okay, let's say I want this job, I need money, so they might compromise, let's say, their ethics and morals. I mean, to me, I want to marry and have children. Okay, I know this person is not right for me, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And long term, it is detrimental to everyone that is connected to that particular decision. So you'll see that with intuitives, they are better at delaying gratification or decide to go on a path that is not what most people would do. Intuitives can arrive at the right decision to a complex question even with limited data or contradictory data. So then they need to gather data to show sensors how they got to the answer. So this is kind of interesting for people because they say, wait a minute, most sensors will tell you that intuition is basically a pattern recognition, but it's not true, because intuition actually will pinpoint the exception to the rule. So in other words, you have a complex sort of problem that you're trying to solve, but you simply don't have enough data, or again, data that actually would point you the opposite way, but you can still get to the answer. And again, that's to do with intuition. So they can receive absolute truth to a question that they didn't ask. For example, they go to bed and dream that, let's say, their cousin twice removed, has been divorced. But they say, well, I'm not even interested in this cousin, but they will still get the answer. So this is something that you'll see with intuitives. And interesting enough is that the less you're trying to get the information, the easier actually to receive it. So again, it's the law of the least effort when it comes to the spiritual realm. And their intuition murmurs, and that murmur is actually louder than the information provided by the five senses or people around them. So an intuitive who doesn't listen to their intuition, they feel really a sense of unease because that murmur is so loud in their heads. And also they feel a deep sense of peace and certainty when they follow their intuition. So they have this sense of feeling solid and feeling like they're on the right path. So that sense of peace and serenity comes when they follow their intuition. And also, they are, in a sense, able to, when they meet a person, to know if this person is like them. So there's not such a sense as, okay, well, the one that got away, I didn't know that he was the one or she was the one. No, and they are unable to fall in love with an incompatible mate because of the difference in energy. If you are with someone, each time you're with them, you feel tired, confused, you can't sleep at night, you have nightmares, you have GI issues, you can't, on the physiological level, fall in love with this person, because when you think about falling in love, it's an increase in energy, a feeling of being light and feeling joyful. And if, let's say, you don't experience that, especially as into feeler, you are simply unable to fall in love with that person. And when you talk to intuitives, they will have an attraction and repulsion for the same individuals. With sensors, depending on their life history or maybe their culture or their age, they might say, well, I like this person, I don't like this person. But when it comes to intuitives, especially intuitive feelers, that they pick up that subtlety. So they will say that, okay, I like this person, and they all will say that because it's based on that subtle energy that the person emits. So it has to do with essence, not appearance. So that's a very important aspect when it comes to intuitives. And finally, when it comes to intuitives, is that when they select close friends, it will be another intuitive or maybe a sensitive perceiver, but they will not be friends, let's say, with a sensitive judger, because again of that great difference in the energy. If you spend a time with someone and you feel exhausted and confused each time you do want to sort of interact with them, you will probably keep your distance. So I trust that this detailed description of intuitives will help people determine whether or not they are part of that group or are sensors. There's so much confusing online, and even in day-to-day life when I meet people, I think that they need to sort of like know where they're at so that they can better determine their strength, their weaknesses, and why some relationships, are not successful. So again, I think that with this information, most people should not have any difficulty determining if they are again part of these 8 personality types that are intuitives or they are sensors. So let me know what you think about the content of this video by commenting below. If you like this video, if you learned something, please click on the like button. Also remember to click on the notification bell to be notified of other videos I'm going to be making. Subscribe to my channel, and we will talk soon.